So this morning I gave a talk about think and design and how important they are to Lenovo. And I talked a lot about the intersection of form, function, and emotion. This is what separates, I believe, our design from many of our competitors and gives us an advantage. In this room, we're surrounded by X1 products, which are the best of the best, I believe, in our heritage that we've ever created. It's a family, a strong family that has a foot in our heritage and a foot in the future. So I'm here today with the Lenovo insiders, and I'll prepare to answer any questions you may have about anything in this room or anything in general about design.
David, this is Scott. A quick question. Form and function, make a lot of sense. Can you maybe give an example of emotion and where your team specifically was seeking to bring that third aspect to one of the products we see here today?
Sure. So, for example, emotion can be generated by things which move or articulate in unexpected ways. So, for instance, having a camera that has a shutter that you can close the camera. It has an emotional sort of trigger to it, or a display that articulates or raises and lowers in a kind of a unique way. It's something that maybe is unexpected, and it just kind of captures your interest.
Great, thank you. I have a question for you.
This morning you described the monitor and the design of it as kind of being like an orchid and that delicate kind of design. Do you take a lot of inspiration from nature or other objects when you're designing various products?
Design inspiration can come from anywhere. You really never know where you're going to find something. I have seen things before at flea markets that have interested me and thought I could figure out a way to incorporate something. I've seen paintings at the Museum of Modern Art that had an interesting composition. An orchid, for instance, that you mentioned. You never really know. It can come from things you've seen or things you've observed. I'll tell you a quick story, like the original Think light on Thinkpad had a little LED light at the top of the screen. That came from a international trip I was on. I was flying back from Japan, dark cabin, and I didn't really want to turn the overhead light on to use my Thinkpad because it would bother everybody. And there was a guy sitting next to me who had one of those itty-bitty book lights clipped on the top of a book. And I thought, well, we could do that. So went back and we made one using a 9-volt battery, some duct tape, and an LED, and it worked. And so that's just observing, how people use things.
Thank you.
Sure.
So just a question. The duct tape triggered this one. So my wife always puts duct tape over her cameras on her laptops. And you have this beautiful, I think it's an all-in-one over here that has the nice Think slider with the red dot on it. And I'm sure my wife would love to see that on a ThinkPad. Is that a design element you're considering?
It is an element we're considering. The challenge on a ThinkPad is that it adds thickness. It's not so much cost or technical capability, it's about thickness. And we are working on some ideas. We think that maybe we can crack the code on that. Because I think people care about this. I don't know how many times I've seen people with Post-it notes, tape. I've seen clothespins. I've seen almost anything imaginable because people are scared to death of getting their pictures taken when they don't know it. I mean, people don't like to have their pictures taken anyway, generally speaking. But if you think somehow your computer's taking a picture of you and you're unaware of it, that's extra bad. Because you never know where you're going to be using it. You might be in a hotel room. You might be in a bathrobe or worse. So we're working on it.
Well, first I want to thank you for making a very small 65-watt adapter. Anybody that carries one around in a backpack is going to appreciate that. How did you make the X1 Yoga so thin and yet still be able to retract the keyboard?
Well, thinness there's many ways you can achieve thinness, but we do not want to do it at the expense of being able to use it. So the easy way to get thin is to attack the keyboard. You start throwing out travel, key response, the sculpted quality of the keys. It's easy. We could probably take that product and make it a millimeter thinner if we wanted to. but we would be compromising the ability to type on it. So fortunately, the business understands this. It's a core trait of Thinkpad. I mean, we have the best keyboard in the industry, I believe. So we protect that very, very carefully. So to make it thin, they go after other things, exotic materials, shrinking internal components, or spreading them out further, or eliminating overlaps. There's a lot of different ways to achieve thinness, but the keyboard is extremely important to the user. I mean, you use the keyboard all the time. To have a lousy keyboard, but have your machine a millimeter thinner is a bad trade-off.
I'm assuming that there are no breaks on this job. I'm wondering, how long does it take from bringing an idea into the office until it's actually implemented and released?
That varies wildly. There are some things which I have been experimenting with for years that we still have not made yet. There are others that may get to market in 9 months. So it depends on, is the product, for instance, already in the pipeline? Is there a plan to produce like the next generation, whatever product it might be? And then there's ideas that the design team has themselves for a completely new product. So like the X1 tablet was born completely in the design center. It was a concept that we created. And so that took more wherewithal to get that through the business, because we had to convince people that this was a good idea, which makes sense. I mean, you don't just jump into anything, but that kind of thing takes more time. And there's, like I said, there's some things which I have little pet projects I've worked on for many years that may never see the light of day. Yeah.
So I've had many favorite ThinkPads over the years, and it pretty much culminated with the X300 when that came out, and I have two now, actually. And last year we talked a little bit about how the third generation Carbon supplants that on the, I call it the ethos throne, right? You've confounded a lot of us this year with the fourth generation, and even more so with the first generation X1 Yoga with its OLED screen. So I don't like that a whole lot, to be confounded like that.
But it's confounded in a good way.
It's confounded in a good way, yes. So my question is, for you, is like, if you had to name one product that's been your favorite over the years, right, what would it be?
All right, well, my favorite ThinkPad is the black one that has the red dot on the keyboard. No, that's very tough, because, you know, technology has changed so much, so many things have changed. There are some sparklers out there that still ring in my heart when I look at them. The butterfly keyboard, 701C, it was incredible. Every time I pull that thing out and I show it to somebody, the reaction is usually big eyes and do it again. And they mean do it again in more than one way. They want to see it again, and they ask, why don't you make this again? And so that's still a big one. Other than that, you know, there are definitely products along the way. The X300 was very, very important, I think, to Lenovo and also to me personally. It was the first ThinkPad made completely under the umbrella of Lenovo. And you may recall that a lot of people were saying that Lenovo was going to ruin ThinkPad. Some of these people, I believe, worked for other companies. I think it was kind of a plan on their part. But so we wanted to make a ThinkPad that was so good, it would be better than anything IBM could make. And I think we did it. We made a ThinkPad that IBM would not have dared to make. It took a lot of gumption, a lot of technology, a lot of innovation to deliver it. So I'm very proud of it. You know, it was on the cover of Business Week magazine. It was a big part of my career. So that stands out in a big way. The entire X1 Carbon series has also been fascinating, because it's been kind of an opportunity to stretch the envelope. And the X1 Yoga with the OLED display is extremely impressive, I must say. It has a fantastic keyboard. The design is cleaner and cleaner and cleaner looking. It still looks like it's a ThinkPad. It has that display that you feel like you can reach in and grab that frog that's on the wallpaper we designed specifically for this event, but it's a big one.
So I said you confounded me. Well, I just want to say thanks for confounding me over the years.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
I have a question, David. I have to believe as a designer, there are times where your ideas are difficult to realize with the available technology or manufacturing at the time. Can you maybe think of an example where time and innovation led to you being able to realize one of those design goals you had from a design?
That's a tough one. There are some things which I tried to get into the X1 tablet, which unfortunately we could not do yet. So I can't talk a lot about those because I'm convinced we're going to do it. It's just going to take some time. But I think one of the jobs of design is to challenge the status quo. So I learned a long time ago, never show a product design model which is bigger than what you think it might need to be. This is just a David Hill rule of thumb. You always show the model smaller. When I show it to engineering, I want them to go, oh my God, how are we going to make that? Because I've never in my entire career working on the design of a computer where somebody has said, we figured out a way to make it smaller than your model. Never. It's always the other way around. So we always start extra small and then try to figure out how, well, we'll give you another 0.5 millimeter. Or on a desktop, maybe 5 millimeters. But it's a big challenge to do that. We have to stretch the envelope all the time. And I think it's fun to put a challenge on the table. If it wasn't a challenge, it would be less interesting.
You craft marvelous language to impart your ideas to us, and in your previous presentation, what are the challenges of imparting your ideas to a global company with a global customer base?
That's a good question. It's a challenging question. So part of being a designer and a design executive, I believe, is the ability to communicate your thoughts and your ideas. A lot of designers aren't real good about this. They can make a sketch of something, they can show a picture or model of it, but they can't really articulate the rationale behind it or the whys and the wherefores and why did you do this and why is this important. I've been fortunate over my career. I've gotten pretty good at this, and in working with Japan for a very long time, I've become really good at communicating multiculturally. I know I have conference calls with Japan and now China almost 2 or 3 times a week easily, in the evenings or early mornings. It takes time to hone that. It doesn't happen immediately, but it is extremely important because design is something that you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, and everybody kind of has an opinion on it. And it's important to be able to articulate what your goal is. What are you trying to achieve, and what are the means by which you're trying to achieve it? It's a complicated thing.
The key being time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So last year you stimulated a great deal of passion in a discussion about a retro Thinkpad and bringing back a Thinkpad that had a lot of features that people love. Can you comment on where your thinking on that is?
So I started that whole thing, and I'm sure there's some people who I scared. But that's okay. We've been advancing the design of Thinkpad now for 23 years. If you look at a Thinkpad today and you look at the original 700C, you can see that there's a definite lineage. You can see, this is the father, the grandson. You can see all of this. Many of the changes we have made have attracted a much larger audience. Some of the changes we made, there's some people are a little wary of it. They kind of wish they had something that may be a little bit more like the X300 or something like this. And I thought to myself, well, why can't we sell this? We own it. We invented it. We own it. No one else can do this. None of our competitors can make a retro anything. No one would buy it. For us, it's a blue ocean. And so I felt that it was a great opportunity to explore this, to try to see what's the traction on this, what is the interest level. And I must tell you, it exceeded my wildest dreams. I had I had no idea what I had created by doing this. So then we followed it up with subsequent blogs and surveys to gather more and more information. And I'll tell you, we have learned more about this customer set than you can possibly imagine through this. I don't think we've ever had any social media or poll participation at that level. So the answer to your question is, it's not over yet. But this is a very complex decision that involves a lot of different things. I mean, we have a product portfolio. We have a limited development budget. There's only so many products you can get through the gauntlet. There are issues with displays and aspect ratio availability. So we're working all of this, but we're listening. And it's going to take some time. You know, some people are pinging me a lot saying, hey, I haven't heard anything on this for a while. What's going on? And the answer is, you're going to have to wait a little while. It's not going to happen, instantaneously. Even to develop the product, if it was in the pipeline right now, it might be a year from now. But I would love to release something like this, like for instance, for the 25th anniversary. I think it would be extraordinarily impactful.
And the 25th anniversary is?
2017. There are no commitments. You can't hold that to me.
It's an interesting note to leave us wanting more.
Yeah, well, I haven't given up because I still believe in the idea. And I don't want to change every ThinkPad like that. That would be foolish, I think. We've attracted an enormous audience. We have to continue to go forward. But there's a group of people who love that thing. So I'm trying to figure out how can we satisfy them.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.